But I'm very keen to make a brief contribution on this. There is a great deal more to be said about this agreement in the coming months, and I do start off by recognising that opening up international trade in a general sense is a good thing. That I believe that more commerce between nations can lead to those in poverty being raised up. I do acknowledge that, and it can, of course, establish great mutual interest in peace and stability. So accept that. Also accept that Australia is a trading nation, and there is a clear benefit to our producers from reducing tariffs and other trade barriers. And the Minister for Trade has set out at considerable length the benefits that are contained in the TPP, and of course we welcome those benefits. But we are not getting from the Minister a clear-eyed assessment of the net benefit, the cost benefit. What we see is a great deal of spruiking about the swings, but virtually a denial of the roundabouts. Now, of course, we do go through a pro forma process. We have a document that is called the National Interest Analysis, but this is a document that has been prepared by DFAT, the organisation that has been overseeing the actual negotiation of the agreement. As someone put it, it's like getting them to mark your own homework. It really, and reading through that document, it is a very shallow document, and as one of my staff commented, it appears more like a set of ministerial talking points rather than a detailed analysis of those things that we could benefit and those things that will be that will reduce our benefit. And I think we need to be very honest and transparent about the good bits and the bad bits, because without that we can't get to that critical point of making an assessment whether or not there is a net benefit in entering into this agreement. Now, one of the things that I've spoken on in a number of these trade agreements is the asymmetry of the low labour mobility provisions. In this agreement contained in Chapter 12, I think the first noteworthy point to make is the US has opted out of this chapter altogether. The US has a very clear-eyed position about this, that it does not confuse immigration issues with trade issues, and it does not enter into arrangements about labour market mobility generally in its trade agreements. So US have opted out altogether. So we have then established a series of side letters for those countries, that want to participate with Australia with labour market mobility. We note, for example, Singapore, we have no side letter with Singapore. The countries that we have a side letter with Canada, and I have to say, as far as I can see, there does seem to be reasonable symmetry with Canada, so that the same sorts of people will be allowed into Canada as are allowed into Australia. So I don't have a problem with that. But what I do when I look at Brunei, Malaysia, Vietnam, Mexico and Japan, I think there is a very real case that there is asymmetry. Now, fundamentally, we have a very, very misleading descriptor here. If you look at the chapter, it's called, it talks about the mobility of business persons. Now, the definition, when we go back into the annex and we go through the fine detail of that definition, we see that indeed business persons is a very, very broadly defined category, and indeed includes any person with a trade or technical skill who can be employed by an existing Australian employer in Australia. So fundamentally, it appears, as from what we can see, that anyone that is on the list of eligibility for a 457 visa is eligible to come in from Brunei, Malaysia, Vietnam, Mexico and Japan without, and this is a critical point, we believe, without labour market testing. There is nothing in those side letters that requires labour market testing. The other provisions of the 457 visa are included. The provision about the payment of wages, but the provision in relation to labour market testing does not exist. The only side letter that it appears to be discussed in is Canada, and that's appropriate in the Canadian system because there is a degree of symmetry there in those provisions, that we get what we give in the deal with the Canadians, as far as I can see. So I think these are very real concerns. We need some great clarification from the government about the position of these trade persons, trade and technical skilled people, whether or not there will be labour market testing. And I think that needs to be entrenched somehow or other in our legislative framework. The other provision I want to raise is the ISDS, and I'm sure the member for Fremantle, who will be speaking on this issue, will go into this at some length. But I just want to make this provision. This statement is that we need to look at this in a very, very rigorous way. The real concern that I understand the reasons why ISDS were set up and what they were designed to protect. But in reality, we have created an extrajudicial system. We have created a system where our rules, our sovereignty, is being overseen not by an international court, but by a private arbitration system that is largely exercised by people who have a commercial interest and who have as their commercial clients the very companies that are seeking to take states on and sue states over the legislative protections that they may be seeking for their people, be it environmental, intellectual property, or indeed labour market rules that may be being legislated, can be challenged by these large corporations. And these cases are not heard by an international court. They are heard by private arbitrators who, in their day-to-day work, are the very people that represent those large corporations in other fora. So I think there is, and Justice French has made a very powerful argument against these. He says that these arbitral tribunals set up under ISDS provisions are not courts, nor are they required to act like courts. Yet their decisions may include awards which significantly impact upon national economies and on regulatory systems within nation states. So a very real issue that we must address, not just for this agreement, but more generally. And I believe that we should be moving towards an international court if we are going to be having these ISDS provisions. Again, thank you to the member for Rankin, and I look forward to us having a very serious debate on this topic over the next few months.